One thing I've noticed is through the steering, this wheel, on the leading wheel, a big lock leans over too much. Now, that's quite an important thing with drifting. The lean of a wheel creates feedback through the steering, so there's actually two ways to do it. So what you'll notice with something like Wisefab keep the wheel a lot more flat. So at full lock, the wheel is actually quite flat. And they use different ways to achieve steering self-centering properties, and what they use is caster trail. In this car, I don't think we have if any caster trail, or maybe tiny bit of caster trail, but what we just use is caster. So we just basically bring the wheel forward, which is your caster, and that creates a bit of an angle of that shock right there. So you can kind of see that at the moment. That's kind of a rough indication of caster. So you can see that shock is on an angle. Now if we back the caster off, I don't know to how far, the wheel would probably become flat at some level. At some point that wheel would come flat, and I'll do that by adjusting the caster and moving the wheel back. But what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to play around with the car a little bit, just to see what other options I've got around flattening that wheel off at big lock. So you can see in this next video how much lean I'm getting on the lead wheel at big angle.
Nico Reed is on the chase here. Remember, this is just open expression.
And through the steering, that's okay for snappy transitions, snappy kind of sort of drifting, but when you're on a long corner and you want to sit at angle on a long corner for a long period of time, having a wheel leaning over hugely is probably not the most ideal way to do it. So there's pros and cons to both. I'm a fan of having a wheel lean over, but probably just not the amount I've got it at the moment. So that's probably not a very good indication of how much lean it's actually getting, because the car's not on the ground. What I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the angle that the wheel is when it's at big lock. Okay, so you can see here, you can see the angle that brake, basically that whole hub, that whole assembly is on that sort of angle. So I've got this really limited camber gauge. What it is, it's a magnet. It goes onto the hub, and obviously this is not how it's going to be set. It sets like that on the side, and then I can read the angle, the camber angle. But unfortunately this gauge only goes to 6 degrees, so you can see it kind of as it rotates. Let me see if I can focus that better. So you can see the little bubble, but unfortunately because it's got such limited degrees, and that wheel there is on way more degrees, that's way more than 6 degrees angle at the moment, so this thing just maxes out. So if I put that on the brake there, and even if I set it to level, make sure that the height's right of it, I guess it's about right. And then if we look at the angle, the bubble is way up here, it's maxed out. But that's okay though, because what I'm trying to aim to do here, first things first, is I'm going to adjust the base of this, so I can kind of move it up a little bit. And then that's also not enough, so then I can put like a nail or something underneath the base of it, so to get it even more level. So put it like that. And you can see the ball moving now. So I can kind of get it to a sweet spot where it's about 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just see what happens when I adjust the camber. So to adjust the camber in this car, all I need to do is undo these bolts, this one, and this one. So 1, 2, 3, and then just slide the shock in, the top of the shock. So that will basically move that in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check down here to see how many degrees of camber we've lost. Okay, so how many So basically how much this assembly is going to fall inwards, okay? And I'm just going to see if there's enough adjustment in the actual camber itself to do what I need. So you can see that we are on 3 degrees positive camber. And we are on, we're maxed out for camber from, you know, in terms of coming out, which will be limited, or as little camber as possible. So what I'm going to do now is just move that in. So let's watch that happen. So I'm going to do that with my hand up top. I'm going to push the and that's pretty much maxed out up top. We can go a little bit more. Right, so we've kind of just reduced about 2 degrees of camber at full lean by adding more camber up top. Now the problem we're going to have now is this wheel, when the car's in a straight line, is going to be really on an angle. It's going to be sitting, I mean, let's just have a look at that right now. If I take this off. Kind of hard to see a little bit, but I'm on the camera anyway, I can see it in real life. But you can see that wheel is like that, and it's probably a little bit much. Right, so that's in the air, that's full camber. What I've done is I've put a bungee cord around the steering wheel so hopefully it doesn't move. Now I'm going to lower it. So that to me looks like a good amount of lean for that amount of angle, which is quite a lot. And it will probably lean even more, because I don't think that will actually be full steering lock. It'll be close, but the wheel tends to move a little more. But I'll just check the almost full steering lock. You can see that the wheel's got a little bit of a lean on it. It's got enough lean to create that self-centering feel, that natural kind of feeling, but it's not leaning over too much like it was. Now I'm going to change it back so it's got minimal camber, similar to what we ran at Summerbash. And there you can see actually there's quite a bit more lean. I mean, it doesn't look like a huge amount of lean, but actually that's enough to create quite strong feeling in the steering. Okay, so it's one day later now. I wasn't originally going to do the caster in the same video, but I've decided to do it. It kind of wraps it all up into one. So what I'm going to do now is we're just going to play with the caster on this thing, and we're going to see how the caster affects the steering lean, much like we did with the camber. And then at the end of it, I'm going to use the caster and the camber to kind of find the sweet spot to see, you know, to kind of design the lean, I guess, of the wheel we have in the front, and that should reflect in the steering and kind of make it nicer to drive on bigger angle. Okay, so that's minimum static camber, about 2 or 3 degrees, and that's 8.2 degrees of caster. So I'm going to knock that top plate back, and that will bring it back to 7.2, and let's have a look at what it does. Right, so that's the same camber, that's just less caster. So hard to see exactly. I'll put that on the ground and we'll take another look at it. Okay, so that's on the ground. It's still got quite a bit of lean on it. Remember, that's got no camber in it, so that's, you know, that's 2 or 3 degrees static camber. So what I'll do is I'll just move it back to 8.2 degrees caster. That's 7.2 degrees caster, and let's just see how much difference in the lean we get. Okay, that's 8.2 degrees caster. Okay, and so that right there is what I reckon is probably about the sweet spot in terms of steering lean. So that is 7.2 degrees caster. I've used the top caster plates to adjust it, and an unknown amount of camber, but I'll measure that in a second. But that sort of looks to the eye about right. If we look at the contact patch of the tyre, you can see. So yeah, it's not too bad. So that will give a good amount of feedback in the steering. It won't be too heavy at big lock, and the car should drive quite well on angle. That's the theory. That's what I'm going to try at the next track day. So what you can see I've done here is shifted that forward, and I've also added a bit of camber on it. So let's just check the camber now, just to see what the wheel looks like when it's sitting straight. So that's a healthy amount of camber, not too much, not too little. I'd be more than comfortable to run that all day long. So I'm pretty sure that that seems to be the ticket. Now I haven't checked for over centering and all the things I need to, but based on how I've had the car in the past, I think it should be okay. So I probably don't really need to worry about that.